Page 114, this is a technique page. We're talking about broken chords in a slightly different pattern. So let's see what we got here. These are not triads. These are like tetrachords, except we're taking the triad and we're going to duplicate the bottom note on top here. So there's 4 notes instead of 3. That changes the fingering. Now we call this the extended position. You extend out. Instead of here, you extend out, and that means 2 and 3 here. That means you got to get 4 notes down at the same time. Good luck with that. I don't. Maybe you can. For the right hand, you're just going up. If you're going to do this sort of thing, make sure the wrist is, otherwise you'll tense up. Okay, but they're doing broken. And they have a rest in between them, so I go. I just take out the rest and play them. Go the other way, turn it over. The idea is to get it in your muscle memory what that feels like. I'm just using white keys here. When you get into the other keys, and black keys are involved, it gets a little tricky. For instance, in B flat, we got to use the B flat, the E flat, the A flat. Here. See, here, and then here. So you got to stay with the notes within the key signature, and using the black keys doesn't change fingering. It just, the space in between the fingers changes slightly to accommodate the black keys. Left hand, it's similar to that, except here, and we use 4th finger, not 3rd. Now some teachers will teach 3rd finger. I disagree with that, I really do. Some teachers teach, well, I know it's 4, but if they're not really piano majors and all, then I can teach them 3. I disagree with that too. I think you should just learn the 4. I mean, good grief. The idea is in fingering, there are different fingering styles. Okay, one of the principles of the one that I learned and what I teach is if the interval is a 1/3 or less, then I use 4th finger. Whatever it is, whatever the chord is. If it's more than a 1/3, then I use 3rd finger. So I recommend that. You need to be able to do this with 1 note in between, even with black keys. Like D major is here. Well, this is a 3rd, so I would use 4th, even though it's more of a stretch. I still use 4th. On those, if it's a 1/3 or less. And that's what I teach. And that's what the book is doing too on this. Rest, the same thing, the right hand. Do them together. Hey, let's be bold here. I'm going to take out the measures with the rest, just play it. Get the idea, go down. All right. You can do it in contrary, and it's easier though, because then you're using the same fingers there, but you got to watch it because the notes and the sounds is now. Yeah, play around with it, have some fun with it. On number 3, you're doing intervals of a 1/6, keeping 1/5 on all of them. Don't know why, but you are, and then left hand. You can do them together. What that's about, but okay. And then on number 5 there, it's interval of a 7th. Now left. The idea is that eventually you get used to the feel of that interval. And when you need a 6th, you just know what a 6th feels like, or a 7th or whatever. That could take years. So if it's not coming, don't worry about it. But eventually it's just nice to be able to do it, because the less you have to look down at the keyboard, the more time you have to study the music. And when the music gets tricky, you need time to study the music, not the keyboard. Now at the bottom, they have the hands together here. Like so. And as I said before, in the process I used to learn a piece of music, the pedal always comes toward the end. So I've learned the notes and the rhythms and the fingering and the articulation and dynamics first. And probably the tempo. Got all that, it's working. Because it's too easy to get lazy and the pedal will cover things up. So you can make mistakes or do things we shouldn't be doing with the hands, but the pedal will sort of cover it up. I used to do that a long time ago before I learned how to do it properly. And you can tell when people are playing whether or not the pedal, they're really using the pedal properly or if they're just covering stuff up. So learn it first. So on this, it's like, okay, I've done all that, and now I'm ready to use the pedal. So again, the line goes down and the line comes up. Those are not always where they go. You have to decide. And the first question is, why are we pedaling this? It sounds fine without it. Sounds fine without it. What is the effect the pedal has to the sound? Well, one of the reasons for pedaling is on a piano, longer held notes, when you play it, it just sits there and dies away. But if you can add overtones to it, it makes it a little more interesting or less boring. It gives it a little flavor. Now it's kind of doing something. It's not just dying away. So one of the things we do is, for longer held notes, we will pedal them to help give them flavor. Sort of what we're doing here. Each one of these is just a little flavor to it. It's not so dry. If we wanted that dry feeling, we'd leave pedal out. Now, when do we push it down and when do we lift it up? Because, as I said, the pedal indications are not always accurate. How do you know? Well, you experiment. First, we do the lag. So in that first full measure, after I play the G, I'm going to push the pedal down. And I'm not going to pedal the eighth notes because I don't want to smear them. I don't want all that. So I'm going to lift the pedal up. The question is when? Well, if I want a little silence between each one, I'm going to lift the pedal up with the hand, the right hand. Like that. I get a little silent, like phrases, each time. If I don't want the silence, then I'm going to overlap the pedal and I'm going to lift it up right after I play the first eighth note. Here, and lift it up after I play the D. That gives me sound all the way through. Which do I want? Well, that's interpretation. How do you choose to interpret it? Or how does your teacher want you to interpret it? Do what they tell you to do if you have one. So I could do that way. At the end, everything comes up together. One way of doing it, you decide. I'm not going to play with me on this. You can have fun with that. But experiment with the pedal on putting it down at different times and lifting it up at different times. And listen carefully to the effect it has on the sound. Listen very carefully. Okay. Let me know if you have questions, but I'm going to talk a lot about pedal. If we're going to use it, I want you to fully understand what's going on.